Hey everybody, it's Tanner Mulvihill. Hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. You know, every week I stress on this show the importance of asking for the business, and I wouldn't be a very good podcast host if I didn't take the opportunity to do the same. If you would consider leaving me a 5-star review on whatever platform you are listening to this show on, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you know a top real estate agent you think should be on the show, please let me know that as well. I'd love the opportunity to hear from them and tell their story. On this episode, I sat down with Ben Canty, associate broker with Own Real Estate in Virginia Beach. Ben shared with me a book he recommends to all new agents, the importance of finding and filling a need, which in his case converted a love of kickball into several happy clients, a reminder your social media is your digital billboard for business, and finally, a story about a home inspection that can only be described as catastrophic. And now, my interview with Ben Canty on the Virginia is for Realtors podcast. Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Virginia's for Realtors, now in our second season. I am pleased to be joined today by Ben Canty, associate broker with Own Real Estate in Virginia Beach. Ben, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing, Tanner?
You know, I'm doing great. It's awesome to have you on the show. And one of the things, that we connected on was you have experience growing up in Northern Virginia. Mm-hmm. And then also you've been to Washington State and lived in Washington State, where I am from. So just kind of that overall vibe of I've seen different spots. And in your case, you've seen upper Northern Virginia and down here in Virginia Beach. So I thought that'd be really good to get your perspective on things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely very different areas just from a cultural standpoint, as far as kind of the general vibe of how people live in the area and what they expect from a standard of life, a quality of life. If you want to go that far, there are just different expectations and standards that the areas have set for themselves.
Yep.
And so it's kind of been nice to be from Northern Virginia and now living in coastal Virginia, because it means that I can understand, if you will, if you put it on a spectrum, I kind of get an idea of both sides and also what happens in between.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool.
And one thing that I noticed on your Facebook page doing a little prep was, you sell in a lot of places, and you posted something that had, Hampton, and just kind of give people an idea of just the different spots that you sell around or in.
Yeah. So technically, when we talk about coastal Virginia, the region is consistent of 7 cities. Some people will even refer to it as 7 cities. Not very common, but some people will say, the 7 cities of Hampton Roads. But I think I've now sold in 13 or 14 of them or something like that. I've gone as far north as Williamsburg, which is, if we were to go just a little bit further, we get up there into the Richmond market, which I haven't done. I've gone a little bit further east onto that side of the peninsula side of everything over there in Gloucester. I've gone pretty far out west, out in Windsor and Isle of Wight and places like that. And I haven't made it into North Carolina because I'm not licensed down there. Maybe one day, but that day is not today.
Plenty to get to before you hit the North Carolina market. So
there's plenty of ground to cover here in this little corner of Virginia. So I think I'm good for now.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's an important point, because it's not just like you do Virginia Beach. So for the agents listening that are, thinking about, hey, well, I have a referral for a particular area. Well, Ben can do a lot of areas down here. So it's not just this spot on the map. It is extended.
Yeah. You always want to try to be, whenever you're serving a certain market, right? You want to be an expert and a resource for all things in that region.
Yep.
And so the good thing is that within at least the small cluster of the 7 cities, that's where I would consider my area of expertise. When we start to get into some of the more fringe areas, places like Williamsburg, Isle of Wight, Windsor, etc., I can still talk to you about them, and I can certainly be a reference point for them, which is nice. But those are also a lot of times bedroom communities for these major 7 cities that are down here. So, they have things that they offer those areas, but most of the draw is to come back into those 7 cities, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, so there's that.
Okay, so you grew up in Arlington, Alexandria. What area of Northern Virginia were you at?
Technically, I was in Springfield.
Okay,
so yeah.
Mike's American, still, one of the best restaurants up there.
Mike's American Grill, yeah. They had a couple of restaurants that
they do.
Yep. Yeah, I remember them being really good from when I was a kid. But yeah, I grew up in Springfield. I went to high school in Burke, so the neighborhood that I grew up in was right at the intersection of Burke, Springfield and Annandale. It was all right there. So if you're familiar or you're listening from the area, what was it? Rolling Road and Braddock Road are two major roads that kind of go through those areas, and my neighborhood sat basically right at the intersection of both of them.
When you were growing up, did your folks move around in that area a lot?
I grew up in the same house for the entire time that I was a kid through high school. We grew up in a neighborhood called Kings Park. The house that I actually grew up in is no longer there. It has since been torn down and rebuilt into one of those gigantic
mega mansions. Yes.
Yeah, mega mansions over there. So that house is no longer there. But when we were growing up, we were always known as the people that lived in the house with the red roof.
Okay.
We had a red roof on the corner. It was one of those aluminum roofs, you know what I mean? And it was bright red, so you couldn't miss
it. If you're giving directions, you're like, all right, look for the red roof and hang a left or a right and you'll be good.
Honestly, yeah, it was a reference point for a lot of people when they were trying to get their bearings or go places. When I would meet people and I would tell them where I lived, they said, oh, the red roof house. I know exactly.
That's the one.
That's it. That was my house.
Now, I always am curious, do you remember anything about the real estate market back then when you were leaving? Like in the neighborhood, could you still buy sub 3, things like that? Or
no, I remember growing up, we would get those postcards and they were probably from real estate agents, but I was a kid, right? So I didn't really pay too close of attention to what they were. But I do remember a publication that we had called the Kings Park Gazette. And the Kings Park Gazette would always at the very back of it had homes that were for sale or had just sold. This was probably something that was done by a real estate agent in the area.
Right.
Smart farming, by the way.
Back in the day, yeah.
But anyway, so we would get these things. And I remember back then, I think when I started paying real close attention to them, I was maybe in middle or high school. And the houses in the neighborhood were going for around anywhere between 350 and 500,000, I think.
Okay.
Which is wild. The house that I grew up in, I believe it burnt down and that's why it was rebuilt. And the burnt down building sold for just under 400,000, I think.
Burnt down, lot only, basically.
So basically you're just paying for the lot and that alone was just 400 grand, I think.
Yeah. And just crazy to think probably where that's at now and just the change over the years and that. It always goes back to, again, and I'm sure we all deal with it when we have that person that go, I'm not going to buy right now. I'm going to wait for rates to come down so it's much more competitive than it is right now. Those of us have been doing it a long time. I'm sure you just like, why? You're losing out on this potential equity over the 10 years you may have the house, 5 years, whatever it's going to be. And I was listening to an audiobook the other day, just thinking about my past clients who are prequels that I did where they chose that route of we're going to rent. And whether that was 6 years ago when I heard that story or 3 years ago when I heard that story and just how much personal net worth they gave up by that bad decision.
Yep. I think I was watching something on Instagram the other day. It was just a soundbite, but essentially you're right. And you got to pick your poison, right? It's like, well, which do you want? You can either have the higher interest rate or you can pay the higher price. So if you want to wait for interest rates to come down, and they might, sure, but you're going to pay a higher sticker price, or you can pay the sticker price now with a higher rate. And maybe you don't particularly like that payment, but if interest rates come down, then you can refinance. So which one is going to make the most sense for you? Because that's when you should buy. And that's kind of, what I tell everybody. If you're waiting for the sake of waiting because you think things are going to get quote unquote better is a really difficult thing to define. And really, if you have the means and the ability to do it now, then waiting is probably not your best option.
For sure. Well, let's kind of finish up on your story. You're growing up in Northern Virginia area. And then when you joined like the workforce and stuff, what were you doing before you got into our crazy gang?
Oh my gosh. I was doing a lot of things.
Okay.
I was doing a lot of things. So initially my whole plan when I graduated high school was that I was going to study musical theater and become a Broadway star and do all these things. And I thought I wanted to do that. And then I freaked myself out and ended up going a completely different direction. So I was a competitive cheerleading coach and I did that for a very long time.
Okay.
And I saw a lot of success there. I coached in Northern Virginia and then I coached out in Washington State and we had a really great time. Saw a lot of success there. It was pretty cool. And in addition to doing that, also because I am so type A, I decided, hey, while I'm coaching, I might as well start a company to produce the music that we do these routines to and choreograph routines for other people in my own routines. So I started a company that was a music and choreography company and I did that for several years. And by the time I kind of finished doing that, I was working with teams and organizations that were based out of multiple countries around the world, which was pretty cool. And it was just me by myself. And then in addition to that, I worked for a little bit as a personal stylist and a salesperson at Nordstrom in Tyson's Corner. And so all of those things are kind of what helped shape me into being a pretty fabulous real estate broker. And I always talk to people, especially when I meet with people for the first time, about buying or selling, just to kind of give them some background about me, because all three of those things kind of have come together to create the perfect storm of what it takes to be successful in real estate, from coaching and helping lead people to a successful outcome. I always say coaching a team is basically when you take a group of strangers that have one common goal and get them to cross the finish line at the same time. That's exactly what we do in real estate, right? So the team starts with me and my client, and then it may include the lender, and then it includes, if we're on the buy side of things, it includes the seller and their listing agent and the settlement companies and so on and so forth. And so when you get to the closing table, you realize, oh, wait, it took a team of people to get me here. And I always say that my job was to coach everybody to cross that finish line successfully. So that's why I always like to highlight that. So on the coaching side of things, that was super helpful, right? And then from the business ownership side of things, this is a business, right? And so being able to have the success that I've had in running small companies and having to do admin work or balance the books, or, you know what I'm saying, or just write a professional email. All of those things were required of me to be successful in that avenue. And so that kind of made its way now into real estate. I have to do the same thing. And then finally, having worked for Nordstrom, I always say that kind of helped with the service side of everything. Yep. Because if you're familiar with the company Nordstrom, you know that they kind of wrote the book for customer service. If you haven't heard about the Nordstrom tire story, you can look it up if you're listening, and I won't bore you.
I was just about to reference that. Yeah.
Yeah, the tire story, right? But having been trained by essentially the leaders in customer service have helped kind of develop my view of service and how I like to carry that service forward. So it's those three things that I've done in my past life that have now kind of come together and said, okay, now go do real estate. And it has really worked.
The P&L part is such an important part of what we do. You're right. You had a leg up on that most people don't, because if you just kind of come off the street and you now are doing real estate and it's like, wait a minute, I got to pay taxes personally. Like, how does that, work? And you have that experience of running, QuickBooks or whatever software program. That's just taking that portion of the stress out of the equation. Yep. And you're not like at the end of the year, I got to owe $90,000. And it's
what do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. That definitely is helpful. And then the other thing I was thinking when you're talking about the coaching for the cheerleading part, now, when you started that, obviously it was enough to be able to have a career on and do those things. But I know now that it is like beyond wherever that was at that point, right? So it's like my friend Wade Capel, who's going to be listening to this podcast, he is shelling out, Wade, no offense, a lot of money in the cheering competitions right now for his daughter to be a competitive cheerleader. Tell me about just the growth that you saw in that for you and just like the whole industry in general.
Sure. The industry itself has really changed significantly from when I got started in it. And it's exciting to see that grow. For me, I would say it's a completely different beast now in a lot of ways, and it is extremely expensive. Yeah. I always like to tell people I enjoyed doing it because it was super fulfilling, but it didn't always pay the bills, because at the end of the day, there isn't a lot of money to be made, although there's a lot of money shelled out, but it doesn't work its way into the life of some of the coaches the way that a lot of people would think that it does. And so for me, it was time for me to kind of put my big boy pants on and do something that was a bit more, I hate to use the word professional because I was a professional when I was doing it, but something like that, a bit more corporate, I guess is a better way to put that. So, and that's kind of what kind of pushed me into getting into real estate.
Well, perfect. That's a good segue. Yeah. So when we come back, we're going to talk about your first year in real estate. We'll be right back with Ben Canty. Do you have clients considering new construction, looking for a builder that takes pride in their work and delivers a beautiful home? If so, I'm excited to tell you about Sona Homes located in Fredericksburg. If you haven't visited a new Sona home yet, reach out to my friend and sales manager, Adarsh Parbadia, at 540-419-3164. Adarsh will be able to answer all your questions about Sona Homes and make it a great experience for your clients. Again, that is Adarsh Parbadia with Sona Homes at 540-419-3164. Make sure you tell him Tanner sent you. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Ben, let's try to talk about that first year as an agent because it's different for everybody. Some people come out of the gate, they close 30 deals, and then you find out 2 years later they're out of the business because they couldn't handle the rush or the stress of it or you name it, and then they're just got burned out. Other people are kind of a slow burn, and some people it just takes a while to really get going. So how was your experience? How did it go for you?
When I got started, I was thankful enough that I had my dad around, who also is a real estate broker himself.
Okay.
Really helpful. My first year, I saw a pretty good amount of success. I think that I closed 8 properties in my first year. So statistically, that's above the average, right? What do they say? The average agent closes like 2 houses in their first year.
It's not like a lot, right?
It's not a lot. And so I was really proud of myself that I got to 8. I think when I got started, it was 8, and then I think 11 the next year, and then like 14. So we were trending upward, which was great. We were never moving backward. So I wasn't one of those people that closed 30 houses in the year. But the good thing for me was that because I had the help of my dad right there, I'm fortunate that I didn't make really big mistakes that would have been huge learning lessons, from that standpoint. And in fact, because of that, it helped really drive my referral business substantially, because a lot of people didn't know that I was so new in the business. They thought I had been doing this for a long time. And, I wasn't about to tell them how long I had been in it.
Month 6, doing great.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's kind of how that was for me. So I wasn't one of these big baller 30 closings in my first year, rookie of the year kind of guys. I was doing okay. And I just had a lot of drive and a lot of passion for people and helping people. So I just kind of stuck with it.
I'm always fascinated by that part. It was great that you had your dad involved. You'd be able to lean to and ask questions because he's not in the Virginia Beach market, right?
No, he's at Virginia Beach.
Oh, okay, perfect. Worked out very nice. You had a mentor to lean on, which is always a big thing because it seems like in my conversations with agents, it's really tough when you're on your own and you don't necessarily have that help and mentorship in the beginning because that's such a valuable time. Like this is either going to make or break you in this first year of real estate. You get your license. Now, how are you going about letting your sphere know and looking back on it? What are some of the things maybe you would have leaned more into or done different? Tell me about your thoughts.
Let's see. So my dad was my biggest mentor when I got into it. And he gave me this book that I read right when I got my license that was called 21 Things I Wish My Broker Had Told Me. It's a good book. I don't remember who wrote it, but I've since recommended it to other new agents. I mentor new agents now, and it's a book that I've recommended to the woman that I mentee now. It's an easy read. It's pretty short. But the biggest thing that he said was, you can't be a secret agent. And so he was like, you got to go out and you just have to talk to as many people as you can. And I took him up on that. So I found that I didn't really have a big social media presence at the time. So I didn't have that to leverage or lean into. So I was just trying to find myself at as many social engagements as I could, from going out and volunteering with different things that meant something to me, or, really going to the local watering hole and say, hey, introduce myself and this is what I do. That was kind of it. And thankfully for me, I'm just really outgoing. So that wasn't hard to do. This is kind of like it. Yeah, you just got to do it. But that's kind of where everything got started for me, was just kind of relying on the fact that I wasn't inhibited very much by anything. I just kind of put myself out there.
It's such an important point, and it goes the idea of, okay, I need to join this group. I need to help in this cause. I need to find these things that I can connect with people on is such a driving point. When you think about that first year and you think about those different activities, can you think of like the first deal that you got from it because you were like, oh, I met this person as part of this group? Was there one that you could almost chalk up for that reason?
Yeah, 100%. The very first house that I ever closed on actually was because a friend of mine, I had coached her daughter years and years and years prior, and she was going to ODU. Her daughter was. And so she invited me to brunch with her and her daughter's friends from college and their parents. They were all just going to do kind of like a beginning of the semester thing. She said, why don't you come to brunch with us? So I came to brunch. I had a couple business cards with me. Someone else brought up the fact that I was in real estate. It might have been my friend Laura. And so they got to talking, and the parents of her daughter's friend, there's a web, like, hey, we're actually looking at buying a house because both of our kids now go to ODU and we wanted to buy them something close to the college because we're tired of dealing with ODU rents and we don't want to deal with, property management companies. It's hard to find rentals that are suitable for our kids. So do you think you could help us? And I said, yeah, sure. They ended up buying a house in a neighborhood called Larchmont in Norfolk. And it was the very first house that I ever closed on. And it was just because I went to brunch.
I mean, perfect story. And that's such an illustrative point of why you make the efforts to get out there and connect with people in the beginning. It's easier said than done. But I think for myself, I'm more of an introvert. So I have to make myself do it. And I will tell a funny story, being down in the Virginia Beach area now more and more, I go to the dog parks and I take my dog Maxie, who's a Cavalier King Charles, and Maxie loves people. He will go up to everybody, right? So my opening line to come introduce myself is I'm like, hey, that's Maxie and he's running for mayor. So then I walk up and I start talking to him and then I'm like, slip in within 3 minutes. Oh, actually, I'm a loan officer and the owner of Bayfield Home Loans. But you got to tell everybody that's how it goes.
I did actually the same thing. So again, just kind of putting myself out there. I would go to the beach and I would take my dog Bella, and she's a miniature dachshund, and she would be at the beach with me and I would have my business cards with me and people would want to come up and pet her. And I told them they couldn't until they took a business card from me. And that it worked. Okay, well, we'll take a business card. Sure. I don't know that I ever got any business from it, but it certainly put my name out there. I was not afraid.
No, and you know what? The more I find that you do things that make you uncomfortable, the easier it becomes. It's just how it is.
I have no issue doing a lot of this thing.
Right. Just do it. Right. Okay. So, your first year as an agent. Now, when you look back, you established the mentor role with your father. So you had somebody to lean on. Were you doing open houses? Do you still do open houses? What were some of the things you were doing in the beginning to try to get more business?
I did open houses. I had all these ideas for open houses that I wanted to pursue that I never did, but I was doing them and they were fine. I never really got much business from an actual open house when I did them. But the thing for me was not that I was getting business necessarily directly from the open house. But for me, again, I told you I didn't really have a big, strong social media presence. So I just wanted to look busy. I just wanted people to know that I was active in real estate. And so for me, it was the perfect opportunity to let people know, hey, I'm actually doing things in real estate.
Yeah.
I have this open house, or I'm going to show property here, or whatever it was. I could take a picture of that or a snapshot of it. I could throw it on my Instagram timeline, on my Facebook page. And I like to refer to my social media as the billboard, so to say. And so I had something when you're scrolling on the highway that is social media that you could see my billboards. They were there. You know what I mean? It was something for people to look at to say, oh, he's actually doing something. And do I still do them now? I do. A lot of times I'll refer them out, especially to my mentee so that she can start to get some business from that too and some activity. But every now and then, if I just feel like I've got a listing maybe that just needs me to be there to kind of talk about it and kind of walk people through the property specifically, I'll still hold them. I'm not above doing open houses. I think they're excellent opportunities for newer agents. I already have a pretty well-established sphere and career as it is. So if there's an opportunity for me to kind of help somebody else by giving them that, then I usually will. But it just depends. It really just depends on the property.
That's such an important point you made there, though, that I really like. I'm in the business. I'm doing the business of the job, and I'm kind of looking busy right now, even if you're not necessarily cashing a paycheck behind looking busy. And so I think that's a great idea, though, and something that new agents just have to be on social, just posting those open houses, and I'm showing this house, and I'm doing a virtual tour of this, and just keep it going. That's got to be part of what you do. Because if you're a secret agent, nobody's going to refer business to you. It's very few people have the ability to walk outside and business just falls in their lap, in my experience.
What I wanted, I think, when I got started was I wanted everybody to be able to see my face and associate it with real estate. If they saw me, I wanted them to know that I was in real estate so that when I'm out, it was, hey, Ben, how's real estate? That's right. Which is what I have now, right? I don't meet anybody here that doesn't associate me with what I do. And I actually would prefer that. So right. I like that,
Be the resource. Exactly. Yep. One of the questions I always like to ask, if you look back on your first 2 or 3 years in the business, can you think about a deal that you got that came from a bold move? Something you did that if you had not done this activity, you already gave one on handing out the cards. If you get to pet my dog, then here's my business card, which I think is a great idea. And I may have to incorporate that in my next dog park visit. But what was one bold move that you really thought, I got this because I did this?
Well, let's see. There's two that come to mind. One was more of a bold mistake and it wasn't on my part. And the other, more of a bold move. So in 2018, I had this bright idea that I was going to found a nonprofit or a chapter of a nonprofit in coastal Virginia. It's called Stonewall Sports Norfolk, and it's an LGBT plus amateur sports league. The idea or the premise there is that there are smaller amateur sports like kickball and dodgeball and volleyball, but each of the leagues, their goal is to raise funds for local nonprofits, local mobile chair, things like that. I founded that, and I did that because I was playing in the same organization, Stonewall Sports in Richmond, and I got tired of commuting to Richmond all the time. And so I said, well, why don't we just do this in Norfolk? So I did. It ended up being something that brought a substantial amount of business to me, but I hadn't thought that would be the outcome from that. Yes. The two didn't have anything to do with one another. I just wanted to play kickball in Norfolk instead of
not have to drive an hour to get there. Right?
Yeah, not have to drive, an hour and a half each way to go do it. So on a Sunday, which was sometimes really difficult. So I did that. That was pretty bold, but it ended up kind of working out, which was really cool. And I'm really glad that I did it, not from a business perspective, but it really has managed to change and transform the entire makeup of the community that we have just in general. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. But that said, I would say the bold mistake, because I said there was a bold move and a bold mistake.
Right.
The bold mistake, we all know the website, the Angry Z website, rhymes with Willow. I had a lot listing, a 2-acre lot that was listed in Yorktown. It was buildable and I was ready to go, and it was listed for like $160,000. And then I had also listed it in the residential MLS. There are multiple facets to the MLS. So one was in the land and farms MLS, $150,000. And the other one was in the residential. And I listed it as a projected construction listing, meaning they would build this house that's advertised at this price when you ratify the contract on this lot, right? Yep. Well, Zillow took both listings because they both had the same address, combined them together, and then put them on their website. And so they said that there was this beautiful 5-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom house with, 3,800 square feet for $150,000 in Yorktown.
I'll take 20 of them.
Yeah. And so I called Zillow and I said, hey, this is a mistake, and we need to get this remedied ASAP.
Right.
Oh, well, we don't have the ability to list 2 different properties with the same address. We can't really make any changes. So I guess congratulations on having the phone calls. I'm sure your phone is probably blowing up. This is real. Sure enough, my phone was blowing up. Some people were really angry with me because they thought I did it on purpose. And so they were accusing me of bait and switching, which I wasn't doing.
Wasn't the intent.
Right. But I ended up having a conversation with someone who called me and said, is this too good to be true? And I said, yes. We met. I ended up listing their condo for them in Hampton. They bought another house with me in Newport News. They've since sold that house in Newport News, bought another house with me.
Holy cow.
Co-workers to me, and I helped their sister buy a house. So I think that I've worked with them. I've probably gotten 10 to 12 different referrals / closings specifically from that one bold mistake.
Yeah. For those of you who are wondering why suddenly all these buildable homes are going to be popping up on Zillow, you can make Ben for the story. I mean, that's crazy. And congratulations that it worked out the way it did, because, I'm sure you're like, holy cow, Zillow, take this down now before this is a problem.
Making you look bad. It makes you look like a liar.
Exactly. But, hey, it worked out in the end. So that's the important part. Now, when we come back, I want to talk about kind of where you're at in your career right now, what you're doing to get clients currently, and the transition from going for that newer agent to where you're at in your career now. We'll be right back with Ben Canty. Hey everybody, it's Tanner Mulvihill with Bayfield Home Loans. Well, 2023 is here, and if you haven't done so yet, it's time to take a good long look in the mirror and ask yourself an honest question. Is your loan officer helping you succeed? For example, are they bringing you new marketing ideas? Do they actively try to generate referrals from the clients you send to them? Or even better, are they sending you business? My philosophy is business should be a two-way street, and I do my best to make it that way. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please give me a call or shoot me a text to 540-850-6267. Let's get together for coffee. Once again, that number is 540-850-6267. Talk to you soon.
Tanner Mulvihill, NMLS number 276814.
Welcome back, everyone. So, Ben, let's talk about your career right now. So you are a broker, not the managing broker, but you are now a broker as well for Own Realty. What kind of led to that transition?
So I've been in the business about 8 years now. The reason why I became a broker is because I just really love an upgrade. Like if I can upgrade something, I'm going to do it. And so, in the state of Virginia, when you get your broker's license, it's an upgraded form of licensure from just a salesperson. But Virginia is not considered a broker state, so there's no requirement for anyone to get their broker's license in order to continue to transact in real estate, which is important because some states do require that. Virginia is not one. So that said, I got my broker's license, and I think I mentioned it earlier, but my dad is also a broker. He's been one of my biggest mentors and influences in real estate. It was on his recommendation. He said, hey, if you can get your broker's license, you need to do it. And I did. I like that it affords me the opportunity to tell people that I'm a broker and why that's important for them. It gives me, I guess I could say, leverage when it comes to being able to talk about what's expected of me as a licensed professional professional. As a broker, as someone with an upgraded license, the way that I'm viewed as a licensed professional is slightly above, because I'm supposed to have a deeper, more in-depth knowledge of the practice of real estate and how that goes. So that said, I did that. I made the transition. I was with another brokerage for about 7 years and I loved them. They were really fantastic. I had made the decision to take my business in a different direction, just personally. And so I made the transition over to OWN, where I am now, and it's been fantastic. But yeah, that's kind of how I got here, I guess, is, my dad said, you have to be a broker. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I got to OWN because OWN just kind of spoke to me as far as what they offered as brokerage and what I was looking for as far as where I wanted to take my business.
Perfect. Now, on a regular basis, let's talk about kind of some of the tech that you use, the systems you use, the tools you use that maybe not everybody knows about. So let's start from here. What are you using on a regular basis to help your clients?
So one of the things that I love is I was introduced to the referral maker and the CRM that you get from the Buffini course. Okay. So I leaned pretty heavily into that ever since coming over to OWN, which is something that I wasn't using when I was at my old brokerage.
Okay.
We had something else over there that I believe it was called Follow Up Boss. I think a lot of people use that one too.
Yep.
A great CRM. I just made the transition over to this one. I've liked it a little bit better. I like the structure of it overall. So that's been really helpful. I'm really big on just marketing and social media in general. So for me, I use Canva all the time. Canva is another thing that I think just kind of helps make my marketing materials and the materials that I use when I'm in meetings with people just stand out a little bit better. It looks more professional. It helps me kind of keep some things organized, helps from a branding perspective, which is nice, and then really the technology that I use, I'm on my phone all the time. My phone is never further than an arm's length away.
For sure.
And it's not to say that I haven't established great boundaries with my clients, but if I ever need to do something, the phone is...
Because it all can be done on there, for sure. Where are a lot of your clients coming from? So if we're talking about the pillars of business right now, what percentage for you is like past client referrals? And then it's, 25% from the league that you established. Like, where are they coming from?
Yeah, I would say if I had to look at the metrics, and I have them, I just don't have them pulled up in front of me. I would say I probably get 20 to 30% from the league that I started. I would say another 50% of those are from past client referrals. And then the remaining percentage just comes from my social media and marketing pushes that I do.
Now, for your social media, are you using anybody, like, do you have a professional photographer that you've hired? Do you have a videographer that you use?
So I have both. The good thing about the brokerage that I'm with is we actually get quarterly marketing headshots done, which is nice. And that's included in essentially the brokerage fees that we pay or the cap fees that we pay. So we'll do quarterly, content shots, which are helpful. I do have a photographer and a videographer that I use for listings. And every now and then while we're at a listing shoot, we'll take a couple of content photos and things like that. But yeah, I do keep a lot of those things in my back pocket just in case. They're super helpful. I certainly feel that, especially as a real estate professional in today's market, if you're not leveraging social media, then you aren't doing it wrong.
Right. That makes sense. Now, you mentioned the Buffini part. Are you currently yourself in coaching? Have you been in the past? What are your thoughts on that?
I've never invested in a coach before. That's not to say that I wouldn't benefit from it. I think everybody would. And it's weird, right? Because I was a coach. So you would think I'd be a big advocate for coaching. But I've never taken the time to invest in a coach. I'm sure that it would help a lot for those moments where you just kind of feel like you could be doing more, or maybe you could be more efficient with the time that you're spending. I think a coach would certainly kind of help me get some direction with those times that I feel that way. I've never gone that route. I guess the only coach that I've really ever had has been my dad.
Right. I mean, it goes back to, again, though, when you have that resource, then you don't necessarily need that. Somebody that's already like laid the trail. This is how I built my business. Follow these steps and you can succeed as well. It makes sense on necessarily why you wouldn't personally have a coach. But I do find coaching, you have to figure out what you're looking for. Like, is your goal accountability? Then find an accountability coach. If your goal is business growth and development, then find that individual.
Exactly that.
Let's talk about after settlement. So, let's say I've now closed. I'm going to see you in the kickball league, but outside of that, what are you doing to stay in front of your past clients?
So what I'll typically do for any of my clients that have closed at least within the last year or 2 years, so 12 to 24 months, I'll just keep them on my pop by rotation where I'll drop, little thinking of you gifts, whatever they are, just kind of off on the doorstep. They're usually seasonal, but it just depends. The thing about the CRM that I really like is it kind of sets you up again to give you reminders for things like birthdays, wedding anniversaries, etc. But I'm also, again, very, very big on stressing the importance to my clientele about how I leverage my social media. So I try to capture them there if I can, just capture their follow, because as long as I've captured their follow there, then I'm staying in front of them because I post regularly. Gotcha. And so again, when we talk about social media being a billboard on the highway that is social media, or the internet rather, when you're driving on that highway and you're scrolling with your finger, you're probably going to see 1 to 2 to 3 things pop up just from me specifically. Mm-hmm. And it's just the easiest way to keep yourself in the room when you're not actually in the room.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. I really like that idea though of capture the follow, because, sometimes tracking down somebody on Facebook or whatever, it's not the easiest. So here's a good one for you as far as like asking for referrals and then also like a review. How do you go about that process?
So I have an email that I send out after every closing. It's got the same subject line just about for everybody, but the meat of it says, hey, I need a review from you. Here are the links. You can copy paste the same review. And, I basically just let them know, hey, listen, my company actually pays attention to these things. They would be really upset if I'm not getting them. Help me out a little bit here. Send me a review so I don't get in trouble, number one, with the powers that be at my brokerage, but also it just kind of helps, keep my name out there. And then, of course, please don't forget to remind people that I'm here for them. And the longer that I can stay in business and help your friends, I can also help you when you have to come back to me, and you will have to come back to me. You know what I mean?
Sooner or later.
Real estate, it's not a final destination, right? It's always something that we're moving, and you always have to make a return back to it at some point. So if you want to be able to make the comeback to me, you got to keep telling people that I'm here, or else I don't know what to tell you.
I'm with you. I wanted to ask you, I've been hearing great things about OWN since I've been in Virginia Beach. So talk a little bit about your own experience.
My own experience. Yeah. So I would say some of the things that I think are super big highlights. I love the fact that they put a really strong emphasis on training. I think that there is a phenomenal emphasis on mentorship and leadership just in general. I think especially when we're talking about people who are new in this business, but even people who have been around and are tenured and, have a lot of experience, that leadership and sometimes that mentorship is crucial because things in real estate change all the time. And so the more that we can lean into each other to kind of keep our tools really sharp, it helps us advocate and do the best that we can for our clients when we're out in the field. There's plenty of this to go around. So it doesn't matter if I'm helping somebody else sharpen their tool. We're not going after the same, client business. We're not going after the same people. We're operating in the same market. We have the ability to help each other that way. And what I think is really great about what OWN does is that they put a very strong emphasis on that. And at the end of the day, there is volume in quality. And what I mean by that is they're very big about the quality of people that they bring into the company because they understand that quality people will do a lot of business. So it isn't about people that are out here. You hear that term kind of like real estate shark. It isn't about the fact that you get some of these like high performing real estate sharks out there that'll just do anything and they go for blood, but it's about the quality of the agent that we've got, the quality of the person that's behind the deal. More and more people are going to want to work with you if they liked working with you. So just be good out in the field and, the growth will come.
And one of the things for OWN, just to, talk about the company a little bit, from my understanding, it's really blown up. And that's what I've heard from other agents that have been at OWN is the culture that you're talking about. But then, they're really growing right now and you're a big part of it too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to be a part of it. I just came over about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago now, because it was in March of 2022. But I certainly grasped onto that culture very quickly because it was exactly what I was looking for. And it's been tremendous. It's been cool to be a part of that growth. There are some exciting things also in the works right now, just from a developmental standpoint, as far as some next steps I'm going to take with the brokerage, which are exciting. Nice. So kind of, be on the lookout for that. But being able to step in now as a mentor, someone that helps train agents, whether they're new or experienced, is a really exciting thing. I just led a training last week for my first time. That was really cool. So it's just a fun group of people to be around, and it's an exciting brokerage to be a part of.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I set you up for this one because I'm very big on my stories. That's my favorite part of the podcast, is hearing agent stories that happen in the business. So here is my question for you.
Okay.
Do you have a funny or scary, weird or otherwise story to share about a showing, a transaction, just anything real estate related that you have run into that you will remember forever?
I do. This is more of like a weird story. So I had a buyer client. She was buying this flipped house in Norfolk, and it was a cute house. And so we got it under contract. This was I think the end of 2018. I think it was around like November of 2020. And we got a under contract. We go in for the home inspection. I work with the same home inspector I have ever since I first got licensed. He is phenomenal. So we go in and we begin this inspection, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. Everything starts breaking in the house. I guess the guy that had flipped it had done a lot of the work himself.
Okay.
And so the HVAC system started smoking.
During the home inspection, not always the best.
During the home inspection, it was gas operated. So we had to shut off the gas to the house. Okay. So that was the first thing, shut the gas off. And we had started to find that there were issues in the electric panel because certain breakers had been tapped into that they shouldn't have been, and they were operating more things than they were supposed to.
Okay.
From a functionality standpoint, it was basically the wrong size panel box for the house. So we shut the electricity off to the house. And then as we're going, right, so now we have no gas and we've got no electricity. And then he was running one of the fixtures in the bathroom upstairs in the second floor. And all of a sudden we're standing in the kitchen, me and the buyer, and she had invited a couple of her friends just to be there with her. And all of a sudden water starts pouring down from the kitchen light fixture. Just pouring in. So we had to shut the water off to the house. So at this point now we've shut off all the utilities to the house. And my client is just looking at me and I'm looking at her like, I don't know what to tell you because I've never had this happen before.
Right.
And
this
so
is not standard.
It was pretty wild. And so needless to say, we got her out of buying that house. She did not move forward with that. But jump forward when I made, the transition to own, and I'm sitting in my office, and one of the agents that's in the office with me, she's talking to me about this house that she was listing and how her clients had only been there for a year, but they had had a nightmare of a time listing it. And so we're talking about the house, and she's kind of giving me an idea of where it's located generally. It's on a main street. It looks like this. And I said, what does it look like? And so she showed me a picture of the house, and I said, this can't be the same house. What's the address?
Right.
And sure enough, it was the same house, and she was listing that house a year later for the people who had ended up buying it after my client let it go. And they had had such a nightmare of a time with it. And I was floored. I was like, there's no way that this is the same house.
Let's just put in perspective. There's 40,000 houses around here. The odds of that happening are pretty slim. Yeah.
It was wild. And I told her then, what happened at our home inspection when we released. And she was just looking at me with her jaw open. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Oh my gosh. That is a crazy story. And I'm sure in that her buyer, and I'm sure she's a great agent that is just like, hey, if you want the house, we can't have a home inspection because everybody else is bidding no home inspection. And then they won the house.
Right. So I think that it closed. That house has since closed for her. They did have a home inspection, and I want to say that they made a lot of repairs, which is good. So whoever the buyer is now that's at that house,
they're good.
Hopefully that they're enjoying it. But I'm going to tell you what, in the end of 2020, it was a little bit of a night.
For sure. That is a crazy story, though. Now, were you a little gun shy after the next home inspection?
When she decided to get out of that house, I told her that was totally fine. And by the end of our conversation, she said, you really should become a therapist. Like, that's what she said to me. So, but she was fully confident in the next house that she bought. And the next one that she saw was the one that she wrote on. It was a great house. She still lives there. I still living her best life in the house over there in Ocean View. So
outstanding. Well, Ben, that is a great story. I will remember that one for a long time, and I think a lot of people listening will as well. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. I loved hearing your journey and your story, and just looking forward to seeing where it goes from here.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's been really cool to be here. So thanks for having me, Tanner.
You bet, Ben. Well, that's it for this episode of the Virginia is for Realtors podcast. If you're a realtor looking for a loan officer you can count on to follow up with the leads you send, keep you updated on the transaction every step of the way, and get you to the closing table on time, give me a call. I'd love the opportunity to sit down with you for coffee to learn more about your business and how we can make it even better. Until next time, this is Tanner Mulvihill on the Virginia is for Realtors podcast.